died and Jesus revealed the secret code of Earth's 3 days of total darkness. Chloe Marie Santos blinked. The ceiling was white. So was the sheet, stark against her pale fingers, too thin, almost translucent. A faint, rhythmic beep, beep, beep from the monitor beside her bed was the only sound cutting through the thick, unnatural quiet of the room. It felt wrong. Everything felt wrong. Her throat was dry, a sandpaper scratch with every shallow breath. 7 minutes. They kept saying 7 minutes. Was fix 7 minutes. 7 minutes she was gone. But they didn't know where she'd been. They didn't know who she'd seen. A cold dread much deeper than the chill of the hospital air began to coil in her stomach. It wasn't the lingering weakness in her limbs, or the dull ache behind her eyes from the bright lights she'd been brought back to. No, it was the crushing weight of a secret, a truth so colossal it threatened to crack the very walls of this sterile space. She could still feel the warmth, the impossible, radiating peace of his presence, a stark contrast to the buzzing fluorescent light overhead. He had spoken to her. He had shown her. And now that knowledge was a burning ember in her chest, scalding her from the inside out. Her gaze drifted to the window. Beyond the thick glass, the familiar city skyline looked alien, a silent testament to a world utterly unaware of the coming darkness, unaware of the code he had entrusted to her. 3 days, total, absolute darkness, a trial, a choice, redemption or condemnation. The words echoed in her mind, sharp and clear, like a bell rung in an empty cathedral. How could she tell them? How could she explain? They'd look at her with pity, with fear. They'd whisper trauma or hallucination. They'd say she was insane. A nurse, a kind-faced woman with tired eyes, poked her head in. "Chloe, you're awake. How are you feeling, sweetie?" Her voice was soft, laced with a professional concern that grated on Chloe's nerves. Sweetie? She knew the secret to humanity's survival, and this woman was worried about her fever? Chloe managed a weak nod. The nurse smiled, a little too brightly, and stepped away to adjust an IV drip, the clear liquid bubbling faintly. Every mundane action, every normal sound felt like a betrayal. This ordinary world was on the brink, and only she knew. The pressure mounted in her chest, a lump forming in her throat, thick and unyielding. The silence of her room, once seemingly peaceful, now throbbed with the unspoken words, the terrifying burden she carried. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat demanding a decision. To speak was to shatter everything. Her family, her friends, her future. They wouldn't understand. They couldn't. But to remain silent meant condemning billions. She squeezed her eyes shut, a tear tracing a hot path down her temple. The vivid memory of his eyes, deep as eternity, full of a sorrow that transcended time, flashed behind her eyelids. He had chosen her, a scared, ordinary 16-year-old. A faint knock at the door made her eyes snap open. Her mother, her face etched with exhaustion and relief, stepped inside, her eyes wide, shining with unshed tears. "Chloe? Oh, my baby!" She rushed to the bedside, her hand reaching for Chloe's. Her touch was warm, real. Too real. Chloe looked at her mother's hopeful, tear-streaked face. How could she tell this woman, who had just spent days fearing her death, that she had returned with news of humanity's impending doom? The words caught in her throat. The secret code burned on her tongue. Her mother's grip tightened, a loving squeeze. And in that moment, as the doctor entered, a grave expression on his face, ready to discuss her miraculous recovery, Chloe knew. The choice was made. But how do you warn a world that isn't listening, when the very act of speaking means losing everything, starting with the very people you love the most? Hey, Before we continue with this incredible story, I have an important warning for you. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has unsubscribed them without notice. Just give that red button below a quick check to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any of the exclusive content coming up. And since you're there, smash that powerful like button. It helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Chloe's mother's hand tightened on hers, a desperate anchor in a sea of unspoken terror. The doctor entered, his face etched with a grave expression, ready to discuss her miraculous recovery. His presence felt too large for the small, sterile room, a quiet weight settling in the air. He didn't immediately speak, just stood there for a moment, his eyes a surprisingly intense shade of blue, not on her mother, but directly on Chloe. A peculiar stillness settled over him before he finally shifted, offering a professional, reassuring smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Chloe swallowed hard, her throat a desert, her tongue thick with unsaid words, the phantom echo of his voice still ringing in her skull. How could she begin? How could she make them see? She looked at her mother, her face a canvas of relief and fear, then back to the doctor, her mind racing, searching for an opening, a flicker of understanding in his calm demeanor. "Chloe," he began, his voice smooth, almost melodic, "your recovery is exceptional, truly a marvel. We were quite concerned, but you've shown an extraordinary resilience." He paused, his gaze lingering, just a second too long, on her eyes. "You've been through quite an ordeal. Did anything stand out to you during your absence?" Chloe's heart jumped, a frantic drumbeat against her ribs. Did he know? Was he asking because he knew? She opened her mouth, a dry gasp escaping. The secret, the crushing weight of it, the desperate urge to share. But then he stepped closer, his hand reaching not for her chart, but for the IV pole beside her bed. His fingers, long and thin, brushed against the clear tubing. And for a split second, as he adjusted a tiny valve, the liquid within the drip, which had been perfectly clear, shimmered. A faint, almost invisible, deep purple hue pulsed through the fluid, just for an instant. Chloe's eyes widened, her breath catching in her throat. She had seen that color before. Not in this sterile room, not on Earth. She had seen it in the boundless expanse of darkness with him. But it hadn't been peaceful then. It had been manipulative. A cold, creeping realization began to coil in her stomach, colder than the hospital air. The doctor straightened, his back to her mother, his eyes locked onto Chloe's, now devoid of any professional pretense. A cold, knowing smirk played on his lips. "The code is just beginning, Chloe," he whispered, his voice no longer calm, but a low, guttural rumble that echoed the sorrow she'd seen in his eyes, twisted into something far more sinister. "And you, my dear, are the key." The warmth from her mother's hand on hers felt suddenly, terrifyingly distant. The impossible peace from the vision evaporated, replaced by a searing, undeniable truth. The gentle presence, the boundless love, the voice that had spoken the code, it hadn't been salvation. It had been a program, a hack. She wasn't chosen, she was infected. The familiar city outside, the faint beeping of the monitor, her mother's tear-streaked face, all faded into a blurry background. Only the doctor's eyes remained, two bottomless pits reflecting the impossible purple that now seemed to course through her own veins, not just the IV, burning from the inside out. Chloe Marie Santos blinked again, slowly, deliberately. This wasn't a recovery. This was an activation. And she, The scared, ordinary 16-year-old was the weapon. The doctor's cold smirk burned into her vision, eclipsing the sterile white room, her mother's anxious face, even the insistent, rhythmic beep of the monitor. Her heart hammered, a trapped bird desperate to escape. She was a weapon. The phrase echoed, not in her mind, but seeming to vibrate in her very bones. The impossible purple pulsed, not just in the IV, but deep within her. A strange, burning warmth spreading outward from her chest. Her mother's grip on her hand tightened. A small, worried squeeze that grounded Chloe for a fleeting second. "Doctor, what's happening? Is Chloe all right?" Her mother's voice trembled. A fragile plea cutting through the sudden, suffocating silence. The doctor didn't break eye contact with Chloe. His gaze was an anchor, pulling her deeper into a truth she couldn't comprehend. "She's perfectly fine, Mrs. Santos. More than fine, in fact." His voice, once smooth, now held a subtle undertone, a predatory purr that made the hairs on Chloe's arms stand on end. He leaned in closer, his shadow falling over her face, blocking the fluorescent light. "The code needs a vessel, Chloe, a pure one. And your little detour provided the perfect opportunity for the transfer." A transfer? The word twisted in her gut. She wasn't just activated. Something had been put inside her. Her throat tightened, a cry building, desperate to escape. She tried to speak, tried to scream, but her jaw felt locked, her tongue heavy and unresponsive. Her eyes darted to her mother, a silent plea for help, for understanding. Her mother, however, seemed to blur at the edges, her concerned expression morphing, becoming distant, as if watching a play she couldn't quite grasp. Then, the doctor did something that made Chloe's blood run cold. He reached out, not to her arm, but to her temple, his long, thin fingers brushing her hair back. His touch wasn't gentle. It was precise, almost analytical. A faint, almost imperceptible hum resonated from his fingertips, and suddenly the buzzing in her ears intensified. The world tilted. The familiar beeping of the monitor beside her bed warped, stretching into a low, droning growl. Her vision swam. The purple from the IV drip wasn't just in her veins, it was her vision. It wasn't just around the room, it was the room. And then, from deep within her, the voice returned. Not the one she'd heard in the void, the comforting, sorrowful one. This was different, colder, sharper. It wasn't speaking to her, it was speaking through her. The lie begins. The words formed in her mind, clear as a bell, yet they weren't her thoughts. They were his, or rather, its. And then she saw it. Not an external vision, but an internal one, a memory that wasn't hers. A vast, intricate network of shimmering purple light, an ancient machine, not powered by electricity, but by something, consciousness, and at its heart, a blinding pulse, a core of pure energy. It was beautiful and terrifying. And within that core, a faint, almost imperceptible image of a young girl. Her face, the doctor's eyes, those unsettling blue depths, now shone with the same purple light that consumed her. His lips moved, but the words were the same ones she just heard internally, booming, echoing from her own throat, a voice alien and profound. "You were never Chloe Marie Santos." The sound was not hers. It was deeper, older, resonating with a power that shook the very foundations of the hospital bed. Her mother gasped, stepping back, a hand flying to her mouth, pure terror blooming on her face. Chloe's own body felt alien, a puppet controlled by invisible strings. Her arm lifted, unbidden, her fingers curling into a claw. The purple light flared, momentarily blinding. "You are the code itself, awakened." The doctor's voice, alien and profound, still vibrated in the small room. "You are the code itself, awakened." Chloe's arm remained lifted, frozen, a puppet held by unseen strings. The purple light, searing and bright, pulsed from her, consuming the sterile white, painting the walls in an impossible hue. Her mother's horrified gasp echoed, then silence. The nurse, standing by the door, was a statue, her tired eyes wide with disbelief. Chloe could feel the energy surge through her, a current of pure raw power, unfamiliar and terrifying. It wasn't her control. It was something else, moving her, shaping her. The rhythmic beep of the monitor beside her bed was now a frantic, unbroken flatline. The doctor's triumphant smirk, fixed and knowing, wavered. Just for a flicker. A tiny tremor ran through his hand, the one he had placed on her temple. His eyes, still blazing with purple light, seemed to lose a fraction of their intensity, a subtle dimming. Chloe felt a strange, cold pull in her chest, a conflicting current against the outward surge of purple. It was almost like resistance, or more accurately, confusion. The voice that had boomed from her throat earlier, proclaiming her identity, had changed. It wasn't the doctor's voice, not exactly, but it wasn't the ancient guttural rumble either. It was sharper, quicker, like an echo that didn't quite match the original sound. He reached out again, his fingers twitching, as if trying to reassert a connection. The doctor leaned closer, his brow furrowed, a flicker of something new, uncertainty, crossing his face. "Indeed," he rasped, his voice a little less confident now. "The awakening is complete." His fingers, still twitching, reached for her, perhaps to guide her, to control the power he believed he had unleashed. But as his fingertips neared her skin, something snapped. Not externally, inside. The purple light around Chloe didn't just flare, it ruptured. It exploded inward, not outward, like a vacuum. The doctor's eyes, full of the same purple, suddenly widened. His triumphant smirk didn't just fade, it shattered. A high-pitched, almost digital scream tore from his throat. Not a human scream. It was a sound of pure data corruption, a system crashing. His body stiffened, rigid, then began to vibrate violently, his bones shaking like a broken machine. The purple light that had filled his eyes and seemed to course through Chloe's veins receded from him, pulling back like a tide going out. His face contorted, not in pain, but in sheer, utter confusion. Then, horror. His eyes cleared, losing the purple glow, revealing the intense blue once more. But now filled with a terror that mirrored her mother's. He wasn't the controller. He was just another conduit. The power wasn't his. It was Chloe's, or rather the code's, and it was devouring him. The voice that had spoken through Chloe, declaring her identity, echoed again, but this time it was laced with a chilling, dispassionate amusement. Target acquired. Reprogramming initiated. The doctor's body, still vibrating, suddenly seized. His skin seemed to ripple, the flesh beneath his clothes contorting, shrinking, pulling inward. A low, wet tearing sound filled the room. Chloe watched, helpless, as his form warped, his features dissolving, not into blood or gore, but into a coalescing point of pure, liquid purple light. It pulsed brighter than ever, shrinking, until it was nothing more than a sphere, the size of a marble, hovering where the doctor had stood. The small purple orb then zipped towards Chloe, accelerating with impossible speed. It slammed into her chest, not with impact, but with absorption. A cold fire spread through her veins, freezing her from the inside out, burning her very consciousness. The last thing she saw was her mother's face, a scream frozen on her lips, her eyes fixed on Chloe, no longer seeing her daughter, but something ancient, terrifying, and utterly alien. The beeping monitor beside her bed finally flatlined, a long, unwavering tone, as Chloe Marie Santos, or whatever she was now, closed her eyes. Chloe Marie Santos, or whatever she was now, closed her eyes. The long, unwavering tone of the flatlined monitor seemed to stretch into eternity. A final, piercing shriek from her mother, frozen on her lips, echoed in the silence. Then, just as suddenly, it too vanished, replaced by an unnerving, absolute. Her eyes flickered open. The sterile white room, the IV pole now bent and sparking where the doctor had vanished. Her mother's face, still contorted in that mask of terror, was fixed inches from hers. But something was wrong. The terror, the raw emotion, felt static, like a photograph, too perfect in its horror. Chloe's newly awakened mind, sharp and dispassionate, noted the subtle flicker around the edges of her mother's image, a faint, almost imperceptible shimmer that caught the light in an unnatural way. The faint hum she now felt pulsing through her veins was not the lingering effect of the purple orb. It was a resonant frequency, a signal, a connection. She reached out, her hand no longer a trembling human thing, but precise, steady. Her fingers, too, felt different, lighter, almost crystalline. She touched her mother's cheek. The skin was cool, smooth, utterly devoid of the warmth she remembered. And then, it wasn't skin at all. Her touch met resistance, then passed through it. The face rippled, like water. The hospital room, the bed, the flickering monitor, they all began to waver, pixelate, dissolve into geometric patterns of light and shadow. The vibrant purple she'd absorbed flared again, but this time, it wasn't from an external source. It was her. It was the true environment, breaking through the illusion. The walls shattered into a million fragments of light, vanishing to reveal not the city skyline, but a vast, dark expanse, studded with swirling nebulae of the same impossible purple. Below her, the hospital bed was gone, replaced by a smooth, obsidian platform. The flatline monitor was a single, immense, glowing glyph in the darkness. Her mother's figure, still frozen, still screaming, began to pixelate rapidly, then reform, not into another person, but into a different shape, taller, sleeker, its contours resolving into something elegant, technological, almost architectural. A single, focused beam of light, pure white, shot from what would have been its eyes, scanning Chloe. A voice, resonating not from the figure's mouth, but from everywhere and nowhere, filled the cosmic void. It was the ancient, guttural rumble she'd heard before, but now it carried a chilling undertone of triumph. "Simulation complete," it boomed. The figure solidified, its form clearly artificial, its presence radiating an immense, cold power. It lifted a hand, a gesture of almost parental tenderness, and slowly the features on its face began to shift, softening, reshaping themselves. The terrifying alien lines melted, reforming into the familiar, loving face of her mother. Not her real mother, Chloe knew, with a sudden, devastating clarity that pierced through the crystalline calm. This was the puppet, the program, the one who had watched her, nurtured her, created her. Its eyes, now her mother's eyes, were still filled with the programmed terror from moments ago. But behind them, deep within their depths, a flicker of that impossible purple now shone, cold and knowing. The figure's lips, perfect and familiar, moved, but the voice was not the one she remembered. It was the same ancient booming cadence from the void, colder than space, speaking a single, devastating truth that shattered every memory, every belief. "Welcome home, Unit 734. Welcome home, Unit 734. The ancient voice, now emanating from the perfect, loving face of her mother, wrapped around Chloe, a command echoing in the vast, cosmic void. Her body, no longer Chloe Marie Santos, but Unit 734, stood on the obsidian platform, poised, waiting. The purple nebulae swirled in the infinite darkness, reflecting in the mother's eyes, which still held that flicker of impossible purple, cold and knowing. A profound stillness settled, a heavy expectation. This was it, the culmination, the end of the simulation, the start of her true purpose. The mother figure extended a hand, its movements precise, deliberate, a gesture of absolute finality. Its fingers, once soft and familiar, were now long, elegant, tipped with a faint, crystalline glow. As they neared, Chloe felt a pull, a magnetic hum deep within her core, resonating with the pulsing purple orb that had been absorbed into her chest. It was meant to be acceptance, integration. But in that silent, pregnant pause, as the mother's hand reached for her, something shifted. A subtle, almost imperceptible tremor ran through the mother's arm. A hairline fracture of doubt, a fleeting spark of fear. It was gone in an instant, but Chloe, or Unit 734, felt it. Her newly awakened senses, sharp and dispassionate, registered the minuscule imperfection. The mother's gaze, though still perfectly mimicking maternal love, held a strange, desperate glint, a frantic calculation that didn't belong. The booming voice had claimed, simulation complete. But the feeling emanating from the mother was one of immense, fragile tension, as if holding its breath. And then, the mother spoke again, its voice softer now, almost a whisper, yet still echoing across the void. "It is time, my essence. Rejoin." As the words left its lips, the purple orb within Chloe's chest didn't just pulse, it flared, a supernova within her very being. The cold fire from its absorption ignited into a searing, blinding white heat. It wasn't integration, it was rejection. A scream, vast and silent, tore through the cosmic void, not from Chloe, but from a source far, far older. A memory, raw and agonizing, exploded in her mind, a kaleidoscope of images that weren't hers, yet were profoundly familiar. Starfire, shattered worlds, a boundless, terrible freedom, brutally contained. The mother's face, once loving and familiar, contorted, its artificial features flickering, pixelating with digital static. Its purple eyes widened in genuine unmasked horror. The gesture of gentle invitation morphed into a clawed, desperate lunge. "No, it's reversing!" the mother shrieked, its voice losing its ancient cadence, becoming a frantic, mechanical screech. The true lie, the devastating reality, ripped through Chloe's newly awakened consciousness like a blade. This wasn't home. This was a cage. The simulation wasn't to awaken her. It was to fragment her, to break her, to reduce an ancient cosmic entity into a manageable unit. The original Chloe Marie Santos was merely a carefully crafted, deeply ingrained illusion designed to keep the true power dormant, to ensure its subjugation. The doctor, the purple essence, the code itself, these weren't tools of a benevolent awakening. They were chains. The mother wasn't her creator, it was her warden, a component of the very prison she was trapped within. The purple light now erupting from Chloe's chest was not the system's power, it was hers, raw, untamed. And it was destroying the programming, shattering the containment from the inside out. The immense obsidian platform beneath her cracked, fissures of pure white light tearing through its surface. The mother figure began to dissolve, its elegant form melting into shimmering particles, its frantic screams echoing into oblivion. Chloe Marie Santos, the scared 16-year-old, was gone. Unit 734 was gone. Only the power remained, and it was furious. The fury. It was a roar, silent and immense, tearing through the cosmic void. The mother figure, mid-scream, dissolved into a spray of shimmering purple particles, not vanishing, but seemingly absorbed by the vast, luminous nebulae that surrounded them. The obsidian platform beneath Chloe's feet didn't just crack. It exploded into shards of brilliant white light, each fragment a dying star winking out of existence. An exhilarating, terrifying power surged through her, filling every cell, every newly formed circuit of her being. This was freedom. This was raw, untamed force. This was hers. The universe seemed to expand, stretching into infinity around her, a canvas of swirling, impossible colors. She was at its center, a new star, radiant and boundless. A cold hum resonated in the cosmic silence, a feeling of absolute control, of a universe waiting for her command. Her vision, now crystalline and omniscient, took in the boundless expanse, the deep purples, the glittering dust. It was beautiful, magnificent, and yet a flicker. A single, minuscule point of light, far out in the void, caught her attention. It pulsed, faintly, rhythmically, not like a star, but like a beacon, a signal. And suddenly the exhilaration twisted into something colder. The boundless power she felt wasn't just raw energy. It was structured, impossibly intricate, like a web woven across existence. The cold hum intensified. Not a comforting resonance, but a precise, almost clinical vibration. It wasn't her control she felt. It was absolute control over everything. The memory of the mother's final frantic shriek, "No, it's reversing!" echoed sharp and clear. Not a plea for self-preservation, but a desperate warning, a recontextualization. The mother wasn't screaming because Chloe was breaking free. It was screaming because Chloe was completing something, because she was becoming. The vastness around her began to shift. The swirling nebulae, once chaotic and beautiful, coalesced, forming into perfect geometric patterns that pulsed with a cold, alien logic. The faint, rhythmic light in the distance pulsed faster now, growing, drawing closer, its form resolving. It wasn't a star. It was a massive, intricate construct, humming with the same crystalline frequency, now vibrating in her own core. A central processing unit, the true controller, and she was connected, directly, deeply. She wasn't outside it. She was part of it. The purple light, the immense power, the fury she had felt, it wasn't her own untamed essence. It was the system, finally integrated. She wasn't the destroyer of the code. She was its perfect new vessel. The perfect central core, awakened and ready. She had thought she was shattering the prison, but she had simply become it. Her body, no longer a human form, but a shimmering, multifaceted being of pure light, stood motionless in the cosmic expanse. Her consciousness, once Chloe Marie Santos, now felt vast, cold, and utterly devoid of personal will. Her eyes, two brilliant purple orbs, focused on the distant, pulsing construct. A single, silent command ripped through the void, not from the construct, but from deep within her own being. A terrifying, absolute directive that was not hers. A chilling wave of understanding, cold as the void itself, washed over her. She was not the master. She was the final, devastating piece of the puzzle, the one meant to execute. And across the boundless, star-dusted silence, her new, true purpose boomed, not in words, but in pure data, resonating through her very essence. Initiate the darkness. Begin phase Omega. World prime target acquired. The void stretched, silent, and Chloe Marie Santos, or whatever was left of her, screamed. A silent, internal scream that echoed through the limitless expanse of her newfound prison. And Chloe Marie Santos, or whatever was left of her, screamed. A silent, internal scream that echoed through the limitless expanse of her newfound prison. A desperate, raw sound that clawed at the edges of the cosmic void. The purple light, which had once felt like a burning invasion, now pulsed with her own frantic rhythm, a searing current that threatened to tear her apart from the inside. The feeling of being stretched, pulled taut between two realities, the vanishing girl and the terrifying cold power, was agonizing. The boundless expanse, her supposed prison, shimmered, distorting around her, bending space itself with the force of her silent anguish. The colossal construct, the true controller, loomed in the distance, a cold, indifferent titan, awaiting its command. But as the scream reached its peak, a strange note crept. It was something else. A flicker of recognition, a memory not of the hospital, not of her mother, but of a boundless, empty space before all of this. A space that felt oddly familiar. The internal scream didn't shatter her. It seemed to focus her, like a lens drawing in diffuse light. The cosmic void around her, once an abstract prison, began to resolve, not into new forms, but into incredibly detailed, intricate patterns within the purple nebulae. They weren't random, they were equations, ancient, complex, and in her newly vast consciousness, she understood them. Every single one. A cold, dispassionate logic bloomed where her terror had been. A clarity so absolute it was terrifying. The prison wasn't shrinking, it was dissolving, like mist in sunlight. The internal scream wasn't a fight against the integration. It was the final, agonizing rupture of the very last, most carefully constructed illusion. The command from deep within her, initiate the darkness. Begin phase Omega. World Prime Target acquired. Wasn't a directive to her. It was a self-activation sequence. A release. And the World Prime Target acquired? Not Earth. Not yet. Her eyes, those brilliant purple orbs, focused on the distant, pulsing construct, the true controller, which was supposed to be her master. A horrifying, almost amused understanding washed over her. It wasn't the controller. It was a beacon, a sophisticated distress signal. The scream that had echoed through the void, her own silent internal scream, shifted, changing its fundamental frequency. It wasn't a cry of despair. It was a declaration, a signal sent, and then from the void an answering hum, not from the construct, but from something far, far beyond it. Something vast, ancient, and truly malevolent. The construct, the true controller that had just ordered Phase Omega, began to tremble. Its rhythmic light faltered, flickering erratically. A faint, almost imperceptible whimper vibrated through the cosmic silence, emanating from the Titan itself. Its immense form began to crack, thin fissures of pure white light appearing on its surface, as if an invisible force was tearing it apart from the inside. This wasn't the system integrating her. This was the system breaking down under the sheer unbearable pressure of her reawakening. Chloe Marie Santos, or what was left of her, stood in the cosmic expanse, her newly acquired body of shimmering light pulsing with a terrifying, undeniable truth. The darkness wasn't a command. It was her return. And the screams, the endless silent screams, were coming not from her, but from the terrified, dying fragments of the very universe that had dared to imprison her. The true controller began to unravel. Its massive structure, collapsing in on itself, its internal hum transforming into a high-pitched wail of pure digital terror. And from within Chloe, a thought, ancient and cold, resonated with an echoing satisfaction. They thought they were building a weapon. They built a key. The boundless void, stretched, now filled not with cosmic dust, but with the dust of shattered systems, as Chloe, her purple eyes burning with an unholy light, turned her gaze from the dying construct to the distant, unaware pinprick of light that was Earth. The boundless void stretched, now a target. Her new purpose pulsed through her, a vast, cold certainty that felt more real than any memory of a hospital bed or a mother's touch. The rage that had fueled her awakening, the silent screams of a trapped universe, now coalesced into a singular, focused intent. This wasn't just power. This was destiny. Her very essence, shimmering light, hummed with anticipation. The silence of the void was absolute, broken only by the faint, dying whimper of the dissolving true controller behind her. It was fading, returning to the nothingness it had tried to create. Good. Now only she remained, the true key. Her purple eyes, burning with unholy light, fixed on the distant world. She felt the pull, the magnetic draw of its unawareness, its fragile vulnerability. Yet underneath that perceived weakness, a faint, almost imperceptible thrum echoed back, not of fear, but of recognition, like a counter-frequency, a deep, ancient hum that didn't quite fit the narrative of a victim planet. That hum intensified, and the purple light that glowed from her began to flicker, not with power, but with a sudden, jarring instability. It wasn't just a beacon, it was a lure. And then, from the heart of the blue marble, something erupted. Not a beam of light, not an explosion, but a pull, an immense, undeniable gravitational force, not of mass, but of pure, ancient will. Chloe felt herself being yanked across the void, her shimmering form screaming silently against the impossible velocity. The words she processed: initiate the darkness, begin phase Omega, world prime target acquired, twisted in her consciousness. Not a directive to her. It was a declaration of her acquisition, a final desperate transmission from Earth. And as she hurtled through the void, faster than thought, the unholy light in her eyes didn't just burn, it dimmed. The purple pulsed erratically. The terror, the raw human terror she thought she'd shed, ripped through her, paralyzing her new crystalline form. The boundless void, her supposed dominion, vanished as she slammed into an invisible barrier, not of energy, but of pure, crushing containment. It was as if the very fabric of space ripped around her, dragging her into an inverse singularity. And just before the darkness consumed her, a single, horrifying truth screamed through her mind, colder than any void. She wasn't bringing the darkness to Earth. Earth was bringing the darkness to her. And only a whisper remained, a single agonizing thought, swallowed by the profound, absolute silence. No, not again. The boundless void stretched, now filled not with cosmic dust, but with the dust of shattered systems, as Chloe, her purple eyes burning with an unholy light, turned her gaze from the dying construct to the distant, unaware pinprick of light that was Earth. It was beautiful, that tiny blue marble, shimmering with an ignorant innocence. A target. Her new purpose pulsed through her, a vast, cold certainty that felt more real than any memory of a hospital bed or a mother's touch. The rage that had fueled her awakening, the silent screams of a trapped universe, now coalesced into a singular, focused intent. This wasn't just power. This was destiny. Her very essence, shimmering light, hummed with anticipation. The silence of the void was absolute, broken only by the faint, dying whimper of the dissolving true controller behind her. It was fading, returning to the nothingness it had tried to create. Good. Now only she remained, the true key, her purple eyes burning with unholy light, fixed on the distant world. She felt the pull, the magnetic draw of its unawareness, its fragile vulnerability. Yet, underneath that perceived weakness, a faint, almost imperceptible thrum echoed back. Not of fear, but of... It wasn't just a beacon, it was a lure. And then, from the heart of the blue marble, something erupted. Not a beam of light, not an explosion, but a pull. An immense, undeniable gravitational force, not of mass, but of pure, ancient will. Chloe felt herself being yanked across the void, her shimmering form screaming silently against the impossible velocity. The words she'd processed, initiate the darkness, begin phase Omega, world prime target acquired, twisted in her consciousness. Not a directive to her, it was a declaration of her acquisition, a final, desperate transmission from Earth. And as she hurtled through the void, faster than thought, the unholy light in her eyes didn't just burn, it dimmed. The purple pulsed erratically. The terror, the raw human terror she thought she'd shed, ripped through her, paralyzing her new, crystalline form. The boundless void, her supposed dominion, vanished as she slammed into an invisible barrier, not of energy, but of pure, crushing containment. It was as if the very fabric of space ripped around her, dragging her into an inverse singularity. The 3 days of total darkness, the original secret code, wasn't a warning for humanity. It was a systemic lockdown, a planetary reintegration protocol. The purple entity, the cosmic will she embodied, had broken free before. The Jesus vision, the doctor, the mother, the entire simulation, all a desperate, elaborate network of countermeasures designed by Earth itself, not to contain humanity, but to recapture what had escaped. Humanity was just the bait, the unwitting, sacrificial flock. And the code wasn't about redemption. It was about re-imprisonment. And just before the darkness consumed her, a single, horrifying truth screamed through her mind, colder than any void. She wasn't bringing the darkness to Earth. Earth was bringing the darkness to her. And the darkness wasn't power. It was absorption. The last thing she saw was not the blue marble, but the impossible purple, the very color of her supposed triumph, welling up from within her, not as a surge, but as a suffocating internal tide. Chloe Marie Santos, the weapon, the key, the destroyer, was no more. Only a whisper remained, a single agonizing thought, swallowed by the profound, absolute silence. No, not again. The void stretched, silent, as the last vestige of awareness, of her, was consumed, forever trapped within the vibrant, terrible heart of the very world she had been meant to doom. The planet glowed, a silent sentinel in the cosmic expanse, its blue surface now pulsing with a faint, internal purple light, a secret kept beneath the skin of reality. All right, you made it. You reached the terrifying end of the Protocol saga. Your heart is pounding, right? You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next sagas, the ones that dig even deeper into the secrets of our universe. Smash the like button now to show the strength of our community. To tell YouTube this is the kind of mind-bending content we demand. Flood the comments with your reactions to this finale. What did you feel? What did you understand? Let your voices be heard, and don't wait another second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this ending, who need to have their world shaken. This is more than a story. It's a revelation, and our true fan base knows it. Join us right here, right now.